I'm choosing someone who already has everything figured out, my fiancée said while ending our engagement for a man she considered more successful. I let her go without a fight. Months later, she learned success can look very different from the outside. I'm choosing someone who already has everything figured out. She said it casually, like she was reading a grocery list. I didn't answer. Instead, I set my coffee mug down on the kitchen counter. Slowly, deliberately, I looked at the engagement ring sitting between us on the table, the one she'd already removed. That's when I realized she hadn't taken it off tonight. She'd taken it off days ago. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I simply picked up my keys, walked to the door, and left. I thought I was just leaving the apartment. Months later, I'd realized I had changed all of our lives. I lost everything I thought the next decade would look like. The apartment we'd picked together. The wedding venue deposit we'd already paid. The version of the future I'd been quietly building toward for 4 years. I believed she knew me, the real version, not the highlight reel. I trusted that love didn't require a scoreboard. I trusted that the man I was becoming mattered more than the man I appeared to be right now. What I didn't know was that Qley had already made this decision weeks before she said a single word to me. She hadn't ended our engagement that night. This wasn't the beginning of our breakup. It was already the end. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 31. We'd been together 4 years, engaged for 8 months. Qley worked in corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions at a mid-sized firm in Midtown. I ran a small urban planning consultancy out of a shared office in Brooklyn. We lived together in a 1-bedroom in the West Village. That's all you need to know. 3 months before that night, things were fine. Or at least, I thought they were fine. Looking back, I think I confused quiet with stable. We'd settled into a routine, her long hours, my unpredictable project schedules, takeout 3 nights a week, Sunday farmers market, the occasional dinner with friends. It wasn't electric, but it felt like something real, something grown up. The first sign I missed came at a dinner party at our friend Gavin's place in the East Village. Qley and I had arrived together, but within 20 minutes, she'd drifted to the other side of the room. That wasn't unusual. She was social. She liked working a room. What was unusual was who she drifted toward. Bryce. He'd come with a mutual friend, someone from Qley's firm. I'd never met him before that night. Tall, sharp suit. The kind of easy confidence that reads as either genuine or performed, and you can never quite tell which until it's too late. He was a VP at some private equity firm. He'd apparently just closed a deal that everyone at the party seemed to know about. I caught pieces of the conversation from across the room. $40 million close. Restructured the whole portfolio in 8 months. Bonus alone was. I didn't catch the number. I noticed Qley laughing. Not her polite laugh. Her real one. At the time, I told myself I was being insecure. I should have paid more attention. On the drive home, I asked her how she knew him. Through Cassidy, she said. Cassidy was her work friend. He seems like a lot, I said. She looked out the window. He's interesting. That was it. 2 words. But something in the way she said it sat wrong in my stomach for the rest of the ride. I dismissed it. I told myself that confident men were always going to seem magnetic at parties. It didn't mean anything. I was wrong. Looking back, that was the night the decision started forming in her head. I just didn't know I was already losing. The next few weeks were strange. Not dramatically strange. Just off. Little things. Qley started coming home later than usual, not by an hour, just by 30 minutes. She started talking about her career more. Not in a sharing way. In a comparing way. Cassidy's group just got a new director. He's 34 and already managing a 200-person team. That's great for Cassidy's group, I said. She nodded, kept scrolling her phone. Another night she said, "Do you ever think about where you want to be in 5 years?" With you? I said. I meant professionally. I told her about a municipal contract I was chasing in Queens, a mixed-use development consultation that could be my biggest project yet. She nodded the way people nod when they've already stopped listening. Something felt wrong. I couldn't explain why. I kept telling myself it was stress. Her work was high pressure. Mine was inconsistent. I figured we were just in a rough patch. That's what I told myself. That wasn't the real problem. The proposal happened 18 months earlier. Rooftop in Williamsburg. Her favorite restaurant. String lights. She'd cried. Said yes before I even finished the question. I'd spent 4 months saving for that ring. It wasn't enormous, but it was considered. She'd worn it every single day since. Until she didn't. I don't know exactly when she stopped wearing it. That's the part that still gets me. I didn't notice the day it disappeared from her finger. I only noticed it sitting on the kitchen table. That wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was realizing she'd watched me not notice. 5 weeks before the end, I borrowed Kelsey's phone to look up a restaurant address. Mine had died. She handed it over without hesitation. But when I opened the browser, the last tab was still open. It wasn't a restaurant. It was a LinkedIn profile. Bryce. I didn't snoop. I genuinely wasn't trying to find anything. But there it was. His headline read, VP, Acquisitions Forbes 30 Under 35 Building the Future of Mid-Market Private Equity. She'd been on his profile recently enough that it was still the last open tab. I handed the phone back. Found the address on my own phone once it charged. I never brought it up. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe I was afraid of what bringing it up would confirm. Maybe I thought if I didn't say it out loud, it wouldn't become real. We went to the restaurant. We had a nice dinner. She laughed at something I said. She held my hand on the walk back. And I told myself the LinkedIn thing was nothing. I still didn't understand. I should have understood. 2 weeks before the end, the temperature in our apartment dropped. Not literally, but that's the only way I can describe it. The warmth that had always existed between us, even in the quiet moments, went somewhere. She stopped initiating conversation. I started filling the silence more. I'd ask about her day. She'd give me the outline. No color. No texture. Just the facts. Meetings all morning. Lunch with Cassidy. More meetings. I'm tired. I asked her if everything was okay between us. Of course, she said. Too quickly. I asked if there was anything she needed from me. I'm fine, she said. She wasn't fine. But I didn't push. I should have pushed. Instead, I poured my energy into work. The Queen's contract was moving forward. I'd made the final shortlist of 3 firms. It was the biggest opportunity I'd had since starting the consultancy 3 years earlier. I was working late, refining presentations, pulling demographic data, running projections. I was building something. I just didn't realize she'd stopped caring what I was building. One night, I came home at 11. She was awake, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, watching something on her laptop with headphones in. She didn't look up when I came in. I sat next to her. She pulled one earbud out. Good session? She asked. Really good, actually. I think we've got a real shot at this Queen's project. If we land it. That's great. One earbud went back in. I sat there for a moment. Then I got up and went to brush my teeth. That night, lying next to her in the dark, I thought about the version of her who had cried when I proposed. I wondered where she went. I wondered if I'd done something specific to make her leave, or if she'd just quietly decided to go. Something felt different. I couldn't name it yet, but it was there. 10 days before the end, I had drinks with Gavin. We'd been friends since college. He knew Kelsey almost as long as I did. We were 2 beers in when he got quiet in the way that meant he was deciding whether to say something. Just say it, I told him. He turned his glass on the bar. Have you talked to Kelsey recently? Like really talked? We live together, Gavin. That's not what I asked. I set my beer down. What do you know? He looked uncomfortable. I don't know anything specific. But Cassidy mentioned something to Brielle. You know they're close. And Brielle said something to me. And I've been going back and forth about whether to say anything. Just tell me. She said Kelsey's been spending time with that guy. Bryce. The one from my party. I kept my face neutral. What kind of time? I don't know the details. I don't know what it is. I just think you should talk to her. I thanked him. Paid for the drinks. Walked home with my hands in my pockets. I thought about confronting her that night. I planned out the conversation in my head 3 different ways on the 12-block walk. When I got home, she was already asleep. I lay next to her and stared at the ceiling. And I decided I wasn't going to bring it up. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized something standing outside our building in the cold. If she was already gone, a confrontation wouldn't bring her back. And if she wasn't, I didn't want to be the man who accused her of something before she'd done anything. Either way, the conversation needed to come from her. I just didn't know how close that conversation already was. She asked me to sit down on a Tuesday. I remember it was Tuesday because I'd had a call earlier that afternoon confirming we were advancing to the final round of the Queen's contract review. I came home in a good mood. Unusual for that stretch of weeks. She was sitting at the kitchen table. The ring was in front of her. Not on her finger. Between us on the table. I sat down. She didn't make eye contact right away. I need to tell you something, she said. Okay. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About everything. She finally looked at me. I don't think I can do this anymore. Do what? This. She gestured vaguely. Us. The engagement. The path we're on. What path are we on, Kelsey? She hesitated. And then she said it. I'm choosing someone who already has everything figured out. I looked at her. I looked at the ring. I thought about the rooftop in Williamsburg. I thought about the LinkedIn profile. I thought about Gavin's face at the bar. Bryce, I said. It wasn't a question. She didn't deny it. It's not just about him, she said. It's about where I am. Where I'm going. I need someone who's already there. Already where? Established. Stable. Someone who doesn't have to hope a contract comes through. Something shifted in my chest. Not heartbreak. Not anger. Something quieter. Something that felt almost like clarity. And you think that's him? He has a clear trajectory, she said. He's already built what you're still working toward. I don't want to wait for potential anymore. I sat with that word. Potential. Like I was a draft pick. Like she'd been waiting to see if I'd pan out, and finally decided I wouldn't. I looked at her for a long moment. And then I did something she clearly didn't expect. I nodded. Okay, I said. She blinked. Okay. I heard you. I stood up. She looked confused, like she'd prepared for a fight and the opponent had just walked off the field. That's it, she said. What would you like me to say, Kelsey? I don't know. Something. You've made your decision, I said. I'm not going to argue with it. I picked up my keys. I'll arrange to get my things this week. She stood up. We should talk about this. I think you've already talked about it, I said. And I left. She texted that night. Can we talk tomorrow? I read it. I didn't respond. She texted again 2 days later. I know this is a lot. I just want to make sure you're okay. I read that one too. Still nothing. She called once. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave one. My best friend Spencer came over that first weekend and helped me move the rest of my things out. He didn't ask a lot of questions. He just showed up with his truck and helped me carry boxes. At one point he said, "You doing all right?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." He nodded. We finished in 2 hours. I moved into a short-term sublet in Greenpoint. Small place. One window facing a brick wall. A radiator that clanked all night. I didn't care. I needed somewhere to be. I'd figure out the rest. The first month was the hardest. Not because I was desperate to get her back, but because 4 years of habit is a heavy thing to put down. I reached for my phone to tell her things. Small things. Funny things I saw on the street. Updates about the contract. I'd get halfway through typing something and then remember. And put the phone down. I lost the ring deposit. The venue we'd booked had a partial refund policy. We recovered about 40%. I let her keep the rest. I didn't fight about money. I didn't fight about anything. I just withdrew. Spencer thought I was handling it too quietly. "You're allowed to be angry," he told me. "I know," I said. "But you're not." "Not really." He studied me. "Why not?" I thought about it. "Because she told me the truth," I said. She could have kept stringing it along. She didn't. She made a choice and she was honest about it. I don't love the choice, but I can't be angry at honesty. Spencer was quiet for a second. "That's either very evolved or very repressed." "Maybe both," I said. That's when I let myself remember something I'd kept quiet for most of our relationship. 3 years earlier, before the proposal, before the ring, before any of it, I'd had a conversation with my father. He'd built a small architecture firm from nothing over 30 years. At its peak, it employed 14 people. Then the 2008 recession hit. He lost it. Not because he was careless. Not because he was incompetent. Because timing is brutal and luck is real. I remember sitting with him on his back porch the year he had to close the firm. He wasn't broken. He was tired. But he wasn't broken. He said, "The ones who panic in the valley never understand the view from the top. Because they leave before they get there." I hadn't thought about that conversation in a long time. Sitting in my Greenpoint sublet, with its clanking radiator and one brick wall window, I thought about it constantly. I wasn't in a valley because I'd failed. I was in a valley because I was building something. Those look identical from the outside. That's what Kelsey had seen. A man still climbing, and she'd mistaken it for a man who never would. 6 weeks after she ended the engagement, I got the call. We won the Queen's contract. It was the largest municipal project my firm had ever landed. A $2.8 million consultation on a mixed-use redevelopment spanning 6 city blocks. My team, which at that point was me, one full-time associate named Mallory, and 2 part-time contractors, sat in our shared office space in Brooklyn and stared at each other. "Is this real?" Mallory said. "We need to hire 2 more people immediately," I said. She started laughing. I did too. It was the first time I'd laughed like that in weeks. That contract changed everything. Not overnight. But it was the moment the ceiling became a floor. Within 3 months, I'd hired a full team of 6. Within 6 months, We'd been approached by a larger firm wanting to collaborate on a state-level infrastructure consultation. Within 8 months, the collaboration had turned into an acquisition offer. Not a hostile one, a respectful one. We think what you've built is worth serious money, and we want it offer. I didn't sell immediately. I negotiated. I brought Spencer in. He had a background in business development to help me structure the terms. We went back and forth for 5 weeks. I didn't brag about it. I didn't post about it. I just worked. I moved out of the Greenpoint sublet. I found a 2-bedroom in Cobble Hill, ground floor of a brownstone, small garden out back. I bought furniture that I actually chose. Not compromised furniture. Not what works for both of us furniture. Things I liked. A good couch. A real dining table. A coffee maker that cost more than it should. I signed with a gym near the office. Not because I was trying to reinvent myself. Because I had energy again. Actual energy. The kind that comes when the weight of a relationship that stopped working finally lifts. I worked. I ran. I slept well for the first time in months. I had dinner with Gavin and Brielle and didn't talk about Kelsey. I went out with Spencer and his friends and didn't check my phone all night. I invested part of what I was making into a small real estate fund that Gavin had been quietly building with 2 partners. I wasn't reckless, but I wasn't scared either. I stopped apologizing for being in process. I stopped trying to look like I'd arrived before I had. And then one day, without fanfare, I arrived. The acquisition closed 11 months after Kelsey ended our engagement. I won't name the number, but I will say it was enough to make me sit in my car in the parking garage of the acquiring firm's Midtown office for about 10 minutes before driving home. Not because I was overwhelmed, because I wanted to feel it fully. My father called me that night. I didn't tell him the number either. I just said, "That thing you said on the porch. About the view from the top." He was quiet for a second. "Yeah, I get it now." He laughed the way he used to laugh when I was a kid and had finally figured something out. "Good," he said. "Took you long enough." The firm that acquired mine retained me as a senior consultant, a condition I'd required in the negotiation. I wasn't done building. I was just building at a different altitude. By the following spring, I was leading a team of 22 on a state infrastructure project that had gotten some press coverage. Not page 1, but a trade publication piece. A local business journal mention. Nothing flashy, but visible. Gavin texted me when the business journal piece ran. "You're famous now. Drinks on you forever." I texted back, "You've always made me pay anyway." He sent a laughing emoji. Brielle told me later that Cassidy had seen the article, and that Cassidy had sent it to Kelsey. Here's what I learned secondhand. I want to be clear, I wasn't tracking this or looking for it. But when you share enough mutual connections in a city this size, things find their way to you eventually. Bryce was everything his LinkedIn said he was. Forbes recognition. Private equity VP. $40 million deal. He was, by all visible measures, successful. Kelsey had chosen correctly by the metrics she was using. For a while, what she hadn't been able to see from the outside, what his LinkedIn profile and his party presence and his bonus numbers couldn't communicate, was what the inside looked like. I heard things slowly, not all at once. Cassidy mentioned to Brielle that Kelsey seemed stressed. Then she seemed quieter than usual. Then she mentioned that Kelsey and Bryce had hit a rough patch. I didn't look for details. I didn't want them. But about 7 months after the acquisition closed, roughly 18 months after our engagement ended, Spencer called me. "You hear anything about Kelsey recently?" "Not really." "What?" Brielle told Gavin that she and Bryce broke up. I let that sit for a moment. "Okay," I said. "That's it. Just okay." "What do you want me to say, Spencer?" "I don't know. I thought you'd have more of a reaction." "I don't," I said. And I meant it. I did eventually find out what happened. Not because I pried, but because Brielle, who is constitutionally unable to sit on information, told Gavin, who told me over beers one night. Bryce's trajectory had, in fact, been as steep as advertised. The problem was the direction wasn't only up. The private equity world is not kind to people who confuse a good run with a permanent altitude. The $40 million deal that had made him the star of Gavin's dinner party had been built partly on assumptions that didn't hold. When the market shifted, and it shifted, the restructuring he'd championed started looking less visionary and more leveraged. He didn't lose everything. I want to be accurate. He didn't fall apart dramatically, but he was managed out of his VP role. Quietly. The Forbes recognition didn't come with job security. And the lifestyle that had looked so settled and certain, the Tribeca apartment, the dinners at places that didn't post menus online, the weekends out east, those things were financed on a level of income that had just changed significantly. Qley had chosen a man who had everything figured out. She'd just learned that figured out has an expiration date when it's built on leverage instead of foundation. That wasn't even the hardest part for her. The hardest part, I think, was subtler. She'd chosen someone at the top of a visible peak and discovered that the view only exists for a while before the weather changes. I wasn't there to watch it happen, but I understood it. It was a Thursday night in late February. I was at my kitchen table going through project notes. The coffee maker I'd overpaid for was doing its thing. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I picked it up. Hey, it's Qley. I know you probably didn't save my number. I changed phones. I read it twice. Set the phone face down on the table. Picked it up again. I've been thinking about reaching out for a while. I don't expect anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I sat with it. The message was exactly what it appeared to be, an apology. Clean. No subtext about getting back together. No fishing for information about where I was or what I was doing. Just an apology. I thought about responding. I drafted something in my head. Something gracious. Something that acknowledged the apology without opening a door. I put the phone back down. I went back to my project notes. An hour passed. I checked the phone again. She hadn't sent anything else. She was waiting, and I realized I didn't have anything I needed to say. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted her to feel bad. But because the chapter was closed. Genuinely closed. Not slammed shut. Just turned. I put the phone in the other room. Finished my notes. Made dinner. I didn't respond that night. Brielle told me the rest. Not because I asked. She just did. Qley had spent the first 6 months after the breakup with Bryce trying to stabilize. She'd leaned into work. She'd gotten a promotion. She was genuinely talented. That had never been in question. She'd moved into her own place in Murray Hill. She was doing fine by the standard definition. But Brielle said she'd changed. Quieter. More careful with what she said. Like someone who'd been wrong about something important and was still processing what that meant about her judgment. She'd told Brielle once, this is secondhand, so I hold it loosely, that she'd been so focused on where someone appeared to be standing that she'd never asked whether the ground was solid. She called. She waited. She'd seen the Business Journal article. She'd watched quietly while something she'd dismissed as potential became something she couldn't ignore. She asked Cassidy once, apparently, if Cassidy knew how I was. Cassidy said I seemed good. Really good. Qley had said, yeah, I figured, and gone quiet. Brielle said the look on her face when she said it was something she'd never quite forget. It wasn't jealousy. It was something more complicated than that. Recognition, maybe. The particular ache of having been exactly wrong. Here's the thing about the word established. Qley used it that night at the kitchen table. She wanted someone established. Bryce was established. I was building. What she'd missed, what I don't think she ever really understood until it was too late, is that established is a snapshot. It describes a moment in time. It says nothing about momentum. My father's firm had been established for 27 years before it wasn't. Bryce's career had been established for 6 before it restructured. What I'd been doing, the thing she'd called potential, like it was a flaw, wasn't stagnation. It was construction. There's a fundamental difference between a building that's finished and a foundation that's being poured. One looks more impressive on a Tuesday afternoon. The other is where you want to be standing during a storm. She'd chosen the finished building and found out the inspection paperwork had been optimistic. I don't say this with satisfaction. I say it because I spent a long time wondering if she'd been right about me. If I was, in fact, just a man with intentions and no follow-through. If potential was just a kind word for not enough. It turns out the answer to that question isn't something another person can give you. You find it yourself. Usually in a parking garage. After the papers are signed. About 2 months after her text, something happened that I hadn't planned for. I met someone. Not through an app. Not through a setup. At a planning conference in Chicago. One of those industry events I used to skip because I didn't feel established enough to be in the room. Her name was Mallory. Not my Mallory from the office, a different Mallory. She worked for a nonprofit focused on urban housing policy. She'd read one of the trade pieces about the Queens Project. We ended up at the same table at a dinner the conference organized. She asked smart questions. She laughed easily. She was direct in the way that I'd come to understand is actually rare. We talked for 3 hours that night. At the end of the dinner, she said, I think what your firm is doing with the mixed-use model is genuinely interesting. I'd love to compare notes sometime. She handed me a card. Professional. Measured. I appreciated that. I texted her 2 days after I got back. We had dinner in the city the following week. Then again 2 weeks after that. It was easy in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. Not because we agreed on everything. We didn't. She pushed back on my thinking constantly. But it was the kind of pushback that came from genuine engagement. From someone who was paying attention, not from someone who was measuring. 8 months after her text, I ran into Qley. Not by design. The West Village is not that big. I was walking back from a meeting. She was coming out of a coffee place on Bleecker. We almost walked into each other. She stopped. I stopped. For a second, neither of us said anything. She looked good. She also looked like someone who'd been through something. Not broken. Just different. More careful with her face. Hey, she said. Hey. How are you? Good, I said. Really good. You. Getting there, she said. She smiled. It was smaller than the smiles I used to know. There was a pause. I texted, she said. A while back. I know. She nodded slowly. Like she'd expected that. I just wanted you to know it was sincere. I believed it was, I said. I was wrong, she said. About a lot of things. I looked at her. The version of this moment I'd imagined, back in the early weeks, in the clanking radiator apartment, had always felt significant. Dramatic. Like a scene from something. The real version was just 2 people on a sidewalk in February. Cold. Polite. A little sad. I know, I said. She looked like she wanted to say more. I didn't give her space to. Take care of yourself, Qley. She nodded. You too. I walked past her. I didn't look back. Not dramatically. Not with purpose. I just had somewhere to be. Mallory and I had dinner that night. She was trying a new place in Boerum Hill she'd been told was good. I told her about running into an ex. She asked how it felt. I thought about it honestly. Like closing a book you already finished, I said. Did it have a good ending? She asked. I think it had the ending it needed, I said. She considered that. That's a very diplomatic answer. I've been practicing. She laughed. I paid the check. We walked home through the cold. Her hand was in mine. About a month after the sidewalk, Brielle mentioned casually that Qley had started seeing someone new. Someone from her firm. Quieter than Bryce. Less externally impressive. More present. Brielle said she seemed lighter. I was glad. I meant that genuinely. Not performatively. Not as a narrative beat. I was actually glad. The version of Qley who'd sat across that kitchen table from me had been making a calculation. She'd been so sure of her math. I hoped the newer version of her had stopped calculating and started just being with someone. That's the thing no LinkedIn profile can tell you. That's the thing no Forbes list communicates. Whether someone is actually present when they're sitting next to you. Whether they notice what you need before you name it. Whether they make the room feel smaller in the best possible way. Bryce had a $40 million deal. He also had a LinkedIn profile open on her browser on a Tuesday night. I had a consultancy contract and a clanking radiator. And I had 4 years of showing up. Neither of those things was enough on its own. The difference was simple. She'd stopped seeing one. And the other was always going to get somewhere. It just hadn't gotten there yet when she was watching. She called once more. 3 months after the sidewalk. I was in the middle of something. My phone buzzed. Her name showed up. She was in my contacts again. I'd re-added it somewhere along the way. Not for the reason she might have assumed. Just because blocking feels like something you do when you're angry. And I wasn't angry. I let it ring. She didn't leave a voicemail. She didn't text. She called once. And then she didn't call again. I don't know what she would have said. Maybe she just wanted to hear my voice. Maybe she had something specific. Maybe she'd just been thinking about something she wanted to say out loud to someone who would understand. I'll never know. What I know is this. The man she left was becoming the man she'd wanted. She just left before she could see it. That's not a tragedy. That's not a triumph either. It's just the way things go sometimes. You stop believing in someone's foundation. And then they build the house. By then, you're already somewhere else. I was already somewhere else too. Somewhere I built myself. With no shortcuts. No borrowed credibility. No polished LinkedIn headline. Just foundation. And time. And the patience to stay in the valley long enough to understand the climb. I never answered. By then, I was already gone.